Hi, I'm Charlie Stoltenow, Dean and Director of Nebraska Extension, and want to welcome you to the Nebraska State Fair and the taping of Backyard Farmer here at the fair. Backyard Farmer is the longest-running locally produced television program in American broadcast history. The show illustrates the innovation of Nebraska Extension and our commitment to serving all Nebraskans wherever they may be. The timely, useful, research-based information brought to homes and now the web every week in an understandable and friendly way makes Backyard Farmer must-watch for thousands of Nebraskans and has for decades. Thank you to all the Extension professionals and Nebraska public media staff who have put Backyard Farmer on the air for 70 years, and thank you to you, the viewers, for making Backyard Farmer a part of your life for generations. Nebraska Extension is proud to have served you for 70 years and looks forward to continuing to serve you for the next 70.
Hello and welcome to Backyard Farmer, coming to you from Nebraska State Fair. We are in the Raising Nebraska building. We have a wonderful audience here tonight. Unfortunately, for you who want to call in, you can't because we aren't there, but you can still send in those emails and questions for our very last show of the season to byf@unl.edu. As always, tell us where you're from, give us as much information as you can about that issue or problem, and of course you can watch us on YouTube and Facebook later as well. So we always start our show with samples, and Kate, you have a little bitty thing there.
Yes, they're always hard to see. But these are sunflower head clipping weevils. And if you're not familiar with what a weevil looks like, they're beetles and they have a really long, elongated snout or nose. And there's a lot of different weevils that you can find on sunflower, but these ones have pretty characteristic damage. He's trying to escape right now. So you know it's the head clipping weevil because you will go and see your sunflowers and they will be either completely clipped off, or you might even see them just dangling by a thread, as you can see right there. And so these weevils, the females will lay her eggs right underneath the flower head on the stem, and then she'll use her mouth to clip the head off. And so the flower will fall to the ground, the eggs will hatch, and that's what the weevil larvae feed on. The good news is that these are relatively minor pests to sunflowers. The plants often overcompensate and make more flowers. But if you're concerned for the next generation, you can just pick off and discard these clipped heads.
Excellent, because they are not pretty in a bouquet.
No, they're not.
All right, Rock, what did you bring? The evil weed?
So, thanks, Kim. This is a weed that a lot of people see frequently. It's yellow nutsedge. We've showed it on the show multiple times. And the reason I brought it today is that we're at that time of year where it's got a really robust seed head on it. It's got a really aggressive system on it. You just haven't gotten on it when you should have. And the trouble is when you treat it now, the problem is that you break the dormancy of up to 25 other yellow nutsedge plants. And they come back next year with a vengeance, right? So they go into the winter, they overwinter, and they do really well. So just hand pull them, avoid treating them. Even if you cut them back, they don't spread by seed. That's an interesting thing. Everyone thinks that these seed heads are viable. They're not. They spread by these tubers. And actually, yellow nutsedge can produce about 75% of the yield that a potato plant would produce. So you think about it. It's just that, I don't know, the chive pretty much covers it up. So they are edible, but you're not going to be able to harvest them. So all I'm saying is don't treat yellow nutsedge now because you're going to have a more serious problem in the following year. So either hand pull it, hand hoe it, or something like that, but try to get as much of the root system as you can. And I know you want to spray it because it's easier. Do not do that because that chemical reaction breaks the dormancy and you'll have more tubers next year than you know what to do with, or more plants next year.
All right, thanks, Rock. Okay, Amy, Rots and Spots.
Rots and Spots. So I visited the orchard here at Raising Nebraska and found this wonderful apple sample. We've been getting multiple questions about this the last few weeks. And this is our classic cedar apple rust. So you're going to see that nice orange to yellow discoloration on that upper leaf surface. It might be causing some further discoloration, early leaf drop, and the leaves are starting to turn yellow. But the thing I really like to look at is if you look at my finger down here and you look at the underside, that is the fruiting structure. So you're going to see that nice little fuzzy mass. that is what's producing the spores that go back to our cedar trees. And the reason why we're seeing it now is everybody's aware of their apple trees right now. You're looking at the fruit, we're getting ready to harvest, and you go, oh no, there's something wrong with my apple tree because they're turning yellow and the leaves are starting to drop. At this point in time, there isn't anything we can do for that apple tree. Take note of it. This is something we're going to make a note, and we're going to spray it next spring as the leaves are starting to emerge. So once again, we're going to write those notes down so we know to do it next spring as those leaves are coming out.
All right, thanks, Amy. And Elizabeth, a little harvesting from outside as well.
I also visited the Raising Nebraska Outdoors, and what I selected is I picked a silver mound artemisia. So the thing about artemisias is they're going to have this very silvery, kind of white appearance to it. And the thing to keep in mind is any of these artemisias or the plants that have this silvery kind of color to them, that means they're really drought resistant. And the other thing that we can tell it's an artemisia is it has a very potent, interesting aroma to it. Is a good way to put it. And so right now it's in flower, but all times of the year it's going to have an aroma to it. And so this is not the artemisias that take over in the pastures in western Nebraska. This is a named cultivar called Silver Mound, but they are a really drought-resistant plant to take a look at.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. We call that one silver mush in the eastern part of the state. All right, first round of questions. Kate, is yours, and your first question comes to us from Wood River. What kind of a beetle is this? And you have a second picture from a different viewer from a different location on a different plant.
Yes, these are very common right now. These are soldier beetles, also sometimes called leatherwing beetles, and they're great to have on flowers. So the larvae are predatory, but the adults will feed on pollen and nectar. They don't cause any damage, and while they're feeding, they're pretty good pollinators for beetles, at least.
Excellent, and we want to give a shout out to Elm Creek for that last picture, so all over the state. All right, 2 pictures on this next one, Kate. This comes to us from Otoe County. Found this critter in the grass, in the sun, fluorescent green. His concern is this emerald ash borer?
So it's not. This is the Virginia metallic tiger beetle. And so these are ground beetles that are predatory. It is similar in color to the emerald ash borer. It has that metallic green, but emerald ash borers are a lot smaller. And chances of you seeing an adult ash borer are pretty slim. What you need to look for are the tunneling under the bark of trees and those D-shaped exit holes. So if you haven't taken out your ash tree, you haven't treated it yet, you need to probably start thinking about it and maybe consult with an arborist.
All right, thanks, Kate. One more picture. This one comes to us from Norfolk. This is Mom's, and she says she has plenty of buds, but the buds either dry up or the flowers are eaten around the center.
So this one stumped me a little bit, just because there's not a lot of things that will eat the petals of mums. So what first came to mind is that there are still some Japanese beetles that are hanging around. They will eat flower petals, as with many other different types of plants. And there's also a handful of caterpillars that might feed on the flower petals too. It's probably too late to do anything, but if you wanted to, just go and shake out the plant, see if anything falls out, and whatever you find, you can probably just hand pick off.
All right, thank you, Kate. Rock, you have 3 pictures from this viewer. This is an Omaha viewer. He says this is in his lawn, 1, 2, 3, and he wants to know how to safely get rid of it.
Yeah, this is white heath, like the candy bar, aster. So it's a member of the aster family, go figure. Basically, it's going to be relatively easy to control with most of the broadleaf herbicides. It does produce seed that's viable, and it also is very aggressive and invasive. So it's going to take multiple applications. There's no way you're going to be able to hand weed this one out because it is very aggressive. It is a native, which is desirable in the garden, but certainly not in the lawn. And it looked, just on a side note, it looks like they could put some irrigation on that lawn, and it might benefit from well because it's pretty dry.
All right, Rock, thank you. And you have 1 picture on this next one. This comes to us from south of Raymond on an acreage.
So this is prairie petunia, and it's also down in the southwest, it's called Mexican petunia, and in the northeast they call it something else. It's really prevalent throughout. It's marketed as a native. Unfortunately, it is very aggressive. It could get in and around pretty much anything. It's got a very viney stem or roots on it, but it also produces a gazillion seeds. I've counted them. There's over a gazillion of these seeds. And the viability is low, but when you produce a gazillion and 100 germinate, then it spreads that way too. And I don't remember if they were asking for more than an ID. Where was it located?
How to get rid of it.
Yeah, good luck with that. If it's in the lawn, once again, as we mentioned in the earlier one, you can spray it with any of the broadleaf herbicides and then spray it again and then spray it again, and then maybe eventually your children can try to control it. This is one of those plants that I see on the native list, and it just irritates me because natives have their own issues. If you can plant them and they aren't really aggressive, then that's a great choice for your yard, but this is one that I would not suggest you put in the garden.
All right, thank you, Rock. Amy, you have 2 pictures on this first one. This is a Lincoln viewer. 25-year-old Colorado blue spruce dying from the top down rapidly. They did have a flood, but it was only in flooded soil for a little while. And it appeared healthy until about mid-August.
Yeah, I don't have a very good answer for you here. This is classical Cytospora canker. So we have a canker in that upper part of that trunk that has caused that whole tree to die down. And once we hit August, it wasn't able to move enough water. And so that's the reason why you saw that rapid decline. The upper part of that tree is never going to come back. It is dead, it is done. So now your choice is you can prune that out and then you kind of have a top dead out blue spruce, or do you go ahead and cut the whole blue spruce out and replace it into that line? That's really up to you on what you want aesthetically. The canker will eventually keep moving down, and you will see death of the whole tree eventually, but that might be 15 years down the road. So that choice is up to you if you just cut out the dead, leave it be, or replace the whole thing.
All right, Amy, thank you. You have 2 pictures on this next one, and this is also blue spruce. This is Gretna. Areas have lost needles, and then instead of blue, some of the branches are kind of greenish. They're wondering, is this drought? Is this disease? Is this all those things?
So looking at this, I took a long time looking at this. It might be a combination of multiple things. We do have a little bit of needle cast going on. We have some Cerococcus needle cast that's giving that purple on the older needles. The needles are a little brown, but I wouldn't totally chalk it up to a drought issue. So I would lean toward it. Cerococcus, shoot blight, and Rhizoptera, both in there that are going to affect. One's going to affect the second year needles. The other one affects the new needles. At this point in time, I wouldn't recommend any treatment. You can prune out those areas as best as you can. As we go into the fall and we continue to be dry, continue to water that tree just to give it a little boost to get through the winter months. If you are going to spray it, you're going to spray it next year with a fungicide, a copper type product, as those needles are starting to elongate to go after and protect those new needles. But that's what you would do for right now.
All right, thank you, Amy. Elizabeth, 2 pictures on this first one. This is a what is wrong with my raspberry canes and what can I do to save them?
So the first question on the raspberry canes is what kind of growing environment is that in? It looks to me that we have some landscape fabric going on right now too, and maybe some rock in there. And so then that raspberry is not able to absorb the amount of moisture that it needs. And then we've got the heat sink, and then we're under the eave of the house. So I think we have what would be under the environmental category, is there's just so many things going on with these raspberries. In terms of whether or not they're going to have it next year, your guess is as good as mine because we're looking at something environmental.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Your next 2 pictures come to us from Hardington. This is a rhododendron, never grows beyond what the picture shows. New leaves appear and then they turn brown. It is planted on the east side of the house.
So rhododendrons are one of those plants that really like the lower pH soils. And so for us in Nebraska, there's only one kind of a rhododendron that we can grow. And so that's going to be that, is we're chalking it up to environmental again. It's not happy in the pH soils that it has, and that's why it's starting to burn when we're putting on that new growth. Unfortunately, until those soils are amended, they're just going to continue to have a problem with the rhododendron in that spot.
All right, and one more, and this one comes to us from Omaha. What is it?
It is a type of primrose, probably an evening primrose. It's technically a weed, but it does do very well, and I think they're very pretty, and they should leave it.
And I think those are biennial, are they not? So
I think they sit as that basal rosette that first year, and that second year is when we see that flower spike. So, but they are very prolific cedars.
all right, excellent, thank you. Well, you know, this Raising Nebraska building is 12 years old, and of course, we are most interested in Raising Nebraska outdoors. Here is Elizabeth to tell us about what transpires in that outdoor learning environment.
About 12 years ago, the State Fair started building their new buildings out at Fauner Park. When these new buildings were put in, that gave us an opportunity to put in several different new landscapes. Here at the outdoor learning area, this landscape was installed about 10 years ago. We have a lot of different plants that have done extremely well out here given the tough growing situations. Behind me, we have the buttonbush, and we have the straight species, which is a native plant to Nebraska. As you can tell, it's thriving and it's doing really well. If you want this plant for your home landscape, you might consider the cultivar called Sugar Shack, which is a much smaller shrub and will do better in a home landscape. One of the other landscapes that's doing really well at the outdoor learning area is the bioswale and the rain garden. This area has lots of different plant material that provides a lot of different diversity. Inside this landscape, we have our water-loving plants like our carex or our sedges. We have our Joe Pye weed, and then we also have a wide variety of plants that will attract different pollinators. Whether it's our butterfly bush or other milkweeds within the landscape, we're going to attract all those pollinators to come to this site. And then also we have some different native grasses and other adaptive plant materials that are doing extremely well in this location. Some of the other plant material that's doing really well out here at the outdoor learning area is the different types of grasses that we have out here. We have different native and adapted species that are doing extremely well. We have our switchgrass, and we have a cultivar called Shenandoah that turns really red in the fall. We have little blue stem, which is our state grass, and we also have our Indian grass, which provides these beautiful seed heads later on in the fall. All of these grasses can do well in the home landscape, and they provide a lot of winter interest if you let them stand during that time of the year. You want to cut back those grasses early in the spring before they start to show signs of new growth. 10 years ago, this landscape was installed. Some plants are thriving, some plants weren't so successful. So when you're out here for the State Fair, be sure to check out this landscape and see what plant material you would like for your home garden.
And just so you know, Elizabeth did tape that 2 weeks ago, and yes, it was cold enough to need a jacket. So there is hope for the rest of the season. All right, you get the next round of pictures, Kate. And your first one here is an Omaha viewer. They sent a couple pictures. Hackberry tree has some sort of an infestation. What in the world, and what can they do about it?
So I noticed a couple things about these hackberry leaves. It looks like there's hackberry psyllid galls on them, which usually aren't an issue. And then there's a handful of different caterpillars that do use hackberry as a host plant. The most common one that we come across is going to be the caterpillar of the hackberry emperor butterfly. And while they do eat the leaves, butterflies, as you know, can be beneficial pollinators. And a lot of times, if the tree is well established and healthy otherwise, it can bounce back from that defoliation. So keep an eye on the overall health of the tree, but otherwise, I don't think you need to do anything.
All right, thank you, Kate. 2 more pictures for you, Kate. And this one comes to us from Lincoln. Flabbergasted at the display of Amy's mold based on the activity of one of your beasties. So what do we do here?
So this is magnolia scale, which is pretty common in magnolia, and it is a serious pest. And what you're seeing, that black mold that you're seeing, is called sooty mold, and it's growing on the honeydew or the excrement from those scales. So the good news is that August and September is the best time to treat the scales, because that's when the eggs are hatching in the crawler stages, which are most susceptible to pesticide treatments. So right now is the best time. You can talk to an arborist, try to prune out the most heavily infested branches, and treat those scales directly with something like a horticultural oil.
And be ready to replace those trees.
Yes.
Oh, all right. You have, let's see, two pictures on this next one. This is on tropical hibiscus. She sprayed them and washed them off. This is south of Raymond again. What is that?
So this is another one of those sap-sucking insects really closely related to scales. These are mealybugs. And the issue with mealybugs is they're another one that's tough to control. They have that white waxy cover that protects them, and they also hide in protected areas on the plant like the nodes. So this is one where if you want to treat it, you need to stay on top of it. If it's outside, get that strong jet of water going. If you bring the plant inside for the winter, make sure it's isolated from other plants so it doesn't spread. But you can also try like 70% rubbing alcohol in a Q-tip and touch the scales with it, or try insecticidal soap or oil. But you're going to need more than one treatment.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Rock, one picture on this first one. This is a viewer who says every spring and fall they have to scratch up this dead grass, reseed the backyard. And the yard is lush until the heat comes, and they have 2 female dogs, 75 pounds and 35 pounds.
So they're not going to want to hear it. It's it's dog urine. It's the injury. You see it closer to the door and along the walk, right? So that means they're reaching out in the lawn. They're female dogs, which tend to urinate in the same location time after time after time after time. And female urine is more caustic than male urine. And female dogs squat over the lawn. Male dogs go up and injure your trees and shrubs, which as a turf specialist, I really don't care about. But the idea that those are female dogs kind of nailed it. I used to recommend you can go to your vet and get this drug. Turns out that was a horrible idea, so we've quit recommending that. So you need to find a designated area for those dogs to go, or else you're never going to be able to maintain any kind of turf there. And you're not going to get rid of your dogs, right? So maybe you find something there's not a plant material that dog urine can really tolerate very well. So there's a mulch, or you can do something different, or you can train them into a potty area, which I've heard people do. But I've been a dog owner off and on for the last 60 years of my life, and that never works out so well because they kind of have a mind of their own. So I can't offer them much advice other than we know why, and we know that it's going to continue a problem. You can put as much water as you want on there, but when it's concentrated like that, it's uric acid, it's urea, it's fertilizer. You might want to back off the fertilizer in the lawn a little bit. You said it was lush. A lush lawn is going to be more injured by dog urine than anything. So maybe back off the fertility, but really there's really no real good solution for that.
All right, one picture on this next one. This is a 5 by 30 area on the north side of the house, mostly shade, watered by irrigation. Lyndon, which is the neighbors, he wants to know what kind of turf to grow in there or ground cover.
I don't think it looks like a high traffic area. You can see an entry exit point. You've got shade, you've got a tree root competition. You could plant grass there and it's going to continue to look like this. I'm going to suggest they just put down a wood mulch and right through that area and live with it that way, because that's going to be a hostile environment for plant material. I'll flip it over to Elizabeth and see if she thinks it's a ground cover that, no.
Nope. Wood mulch, that's where it's at.
Okay.
All right, 3 pictures on this next one, Rock. This comes to us from Spirit Lake, Iowa. Had some bare spots, transplanted this turf species from a berm, thinking it would fill in. It's a whole different texture. Do we know what this is, or can we give some recommendations?
I looked at this multiple times, and I can't key that grass out. It doesn't have a seed head on it. I can't see the ligula auricles on the stem, so not that you need to belabor yourself on what the ligula and auricle is, but anyway, I don't have any key identifiers. I know it's not compatible with the grass they have, and it kind of surprised me that they would pull something from a berm that was probably ornamentals and stick it in there and hope it blended or melded with the rest of the grass. I'm going to say buy some grass seed of the same type that you have, and then just plant back in there. Fall's the perfect time for seeding, so I'd suggest you do it now.
All right, thanks, Rock. Amy, one picture on this first one. This comes to us from Council Bluffs. What are the scars on this apple?
Oh, beautiful apple scab, our wonderful little friend. Once again, just kind of like cedar apple rust that I showed at the beginning of the show, this is one that you have to treat at the beginning of the year and then continue to spray and treat for it. As we're going into fall, sanitation is really huge. As those leaves are starting to drop, that's going to be the source of inoculum for next year. We're going to pick up those leaves and get rid of any apples that fall off the tree as we go into the fall months. But if you want to prevent scabby apples, start spraying in the spring and continue according to your label instructions.
All right, thank you, Amy. 2 pictures on, 2 pictures on this next one. This is a house plant dying from the soil up. She's had a rosemary do the same thing, and she's wondering what we have going on here.
So as she's pointed out, it's dying from the bottom and working its way up. And if you look at the picture, it's really gray and fuzzy. I would probably lean toward it's too wet. We probably have a crown rot, probably botrytis, and it's probably moving its way up. So reduce that watering. And that's one of the biggest struggles with your houseplants. You have to know exactly how much water that plant can handle or not handle. So dipping your finger in there, seeing if it's wet, and watering it only when it's needed, not because I haven't watered it in a week, is not always a best management practice on houseplants. So I would suggest reducing that water and see if that would help that plant. And with how much injury you do have, I maybe would start looking at replacing that houseplant or see if you can do a cutting and get a new rooting started.
All right, thank you, Amy. 2 pictures on this first one, Elizabeth. This is a Grand Island viewer. Planted tomatoes from a friend. He thought there could have been some eggplant seeds. Is that an eggplant?
It's neither a tomato nor an eggplant. I am leaning towards a cockleburr. But we'll have to see if we get some fruiting bodies from it. But no, that is not a vegetable crop.
All right. 2 pictures on this next one, Elizabeth. This is yet another mystery melon. This is Omaha. Cannot figure out what kind of melon they planted.
So there's lots of different melons that'll have that green skin to it. It could be a Santa Claus melon. It could be a honeydew melon. It could be, let's just pick a green melon. So when we take a look at those, they should slip away from the melon when they're ripe. So a lot of them are going to turn like a lighter green, kind of yellow kind of coloration to them. That vine is going to start to kind of fade, and then it's going to kind of start to smell sweet. So just continue to watch it, continue to see if you have those signs of ripening, and it's going to be an adventure for you when you eat it.
Or not.
I'd eat it. Just try it once.
All right. One more picture. This is LeClaire, Iowa. 8-year-old white pine. You can see it way in the background there. In a shady area, not growing as well, and the needles are yellowish. They're wondering, is this iron or something else?
I would go for something else. We're looking at the little yellow thing in the center of the screen, and so that's got a lot of competition on it. That pine tree is having to deal with a lot of different shade, and so I can't see that tree doing extremely well in that location. It's just too shaded for it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, tonight we're going to visit our backyard farmer garden for the very last time this season. Terry and the Master Gardeners have done their usual fantastic job. It looks awesome. So here's Terry to tell us more out at the backyard farmer garden.
This is our last look of the season at the Backyard Farmer Garden, and boy, have we had a great season. We had a wet spring, we've had a very dry, very hot summer, but the garden still has come through, looks fantastic, and we are well over 500 pounds of produce donated out of our garden so far this season. We're super proud of all of our volunteers that have helped make this garden look as beautiful as it does. We are in our fall process of taking all those notes, figuring out what went well, what didn't go well, what we want to see next year, and we're going to start doing some soil prep on the raised bed that we started this year to make sure that we have some good organic matter in there, and we're also going to be adding some new raised beds. We started putting them together. We're going to be working that soil, getting it ready all fall long and throughout the winter, so we'll be ready to plant first thing next spring. And next week, you'll be able to see the time lapse of how our garden grew all summer long in 2022. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden anytime. Remember, just because the season's over, the garden is still open.
Well, the season, but now it is time for the plants of the week. Elizabeth.
Yes, so the plants of the week came from Raising Nebraska Outdoors. And the reason they were selected is because they are not only, they're dual purpose, we'll say it that way. So first we have the millet. So millet is not only a grain crop, but also University of Nebraska at Lincoln also does have a very substantial breeding program for ornamental millet, like Purple Majesty. And so that's the thing to keep in mind with some of these is you have the grain variety, but we also have the ornamental varieties as well that will do well in the landscape and provide that really strong upright structure. The other one that is the yellow one is one that a lot of us don't see very often. What it is it is safflower. So safflower can be grown in more western Nebraska, but the reason that it's being grown here at Raising Nebraska is because it is a cover crop. So both of these can be used as bird feed or be found under your bird feeders. So if you want to grow your own bird food, you can select either one of these and you can feed the birds and have some pretty ornamental plants as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, Kate, 3 pictures on this first one. This comes to us from Lincoln. Dahlia bulbs that were overwintered in a paper bag. She thought she saw mites. She sprayed with oil. The flower heads drooped. The leaves did this. What do we have going on here?
I see a lot going on with this. It looks like there was some leaf miner damage. In the second picture, I see some aphids, but I think the biggest problem is spider mites. So spider mites like hot, dry weather, and we've had a lot of hot, dry weather here in the state. And I think at this point, with as much damage as I see on this, you might just want to cut that back and start from scratch for next year. And I believe you can treat the bulb with neem oil, possibly. Don't quote me on that. Elizabeth told me that. But
I said you could. You could. Possibly.
Yeah, in case there's any spider mites overwintering on that bulb, but I would just kind of cut your losses at this point.
All right, thank you, Kate. Your next one, you have one picture. She's 17 miles northwest of Seward. This is zucchini. What's she got going on here?
So this is really interesting because there's an aphid problem on the zucchini. These are likely melon aphids, but from what I can see in the picture, almost all of these aphids have been parasitized by a tiny little wasp. So the wasp will sting the aphid, lay an egg in there, and then the aphid's eaten from the inside out. And what you have left after the wasp comes out are these tiny little aphid mummies. So this is an excellent example of natural biological control. Yes, you have aphid problems, but nature is taking care of it for you.
Excellent. So nothing she should do at this point?
Nothing. Nope.
All right. And one more picture, and this comes to us from Lincoln. She sent a picture of a milkweed with all sorts of yellow spots, black spots, activity. She's wondering, are these eggs? What are the black things? They had a caterpillar on one. They wonder if the caterpillars will actually pupate and live over the winter, or is it too late?
Yeah, so the yellow things are oleander aphids. The black things, from what I can see, are probably parasitized oleander aphids. And the cool things about monarchs is that they have this really great long migration. So the caterpillars you see now are probably the last generation we're getting here in the state. So those will form a chrysalis, the monarch will emerge, and then that monarch will make some 3,000-mile journey all the way to Mexico to overwinter. So you don't need to keep the milkweed throughout the winter. Once all the caterpillars are gone, season's over, you can cut that back and it'll come back next year.
All right, thank you, Kate. Rock, 2 pictures on the first one, and I know that you and Amy might share information on this, but this is a North Platte viewer, and he was told this is a root fungus in the lawn. They treat in the spring, but it keeps coming back. What is the recommended treatment?
So
yellow and then black.
So this could be a root fungus. It could be any number of other things as well. And root fungus is so generic to me. I'm not sure who keyed it out for them. There are diseases that you would treat in the spring. Necrotic ring spot, summer patch, for example. But you still have to get a better ID than root fungus, because I'm not convinced based on those pictures that that's actually fungal activity. It could be anything under the sun. So we need a sample in the diagnostic clinic on campus before we can definitively identify and give you a recommendation. I wish I had better news for the viewer, but we're not going to go down that road. We're not going to recommend a fungicide if we don't need it, right?
All right, excellent. You have one picture on this next one, Rock. This is Southwest Omaha. What are these? He has 3 of these rings in his yard.
So that's a more characteristic of either necrotic ring spot or summer patch. 2 diseases that we see in the spring, and we see the damage when we get dry, right? And that's why they show those rings. That's a more, that's a pretty good idea, except that, it's one or the other, but we can't really tell you till we know when they saw it and when it first started to express their things. And also the treatment windows are very narrow. So we can say, yes, that's definitely a root fungus. It's either necrotic ring spot or summer patch, but we need to know when you first see it, depending upon which one it is when we would make the recommendation. So if the viewer wants to get back with us and tell us when they first see the pathogen, we can tell which one it is, whether it's NRS or summer patch, and we can make a recommendation. But the better option is that NRS and summer patch, we have much better cultivars now, so overseeding with a more resistant cultivar is the way to go. And usually when you buy high quality seed, especially Blue Tag certified, it'll have that resistance on the label somewhere because that's one of their marketing things. I would just overseed that lawn, and within a year or two you're going to see that you have far less of those spring pathogens that cause damage in the late summer.
When you look at resistance, it typically has both of them in it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
So it doesn't matter if it's necrotic ring or summer patch. The genetics are already there for both of them.
Gotcha. All right, this next one, Rock, we answered this a little bit in lightning round, but without the picture. The lawn on the right was sprayed with Grazon, and obviously some overspray into the neighbor's yard. They're wondering what they can do in their own yard to restore turf to health.
So picloram is the active ingredient in Grazon. It's not labeled for the home. There was an off-label use of the product right here because it's labeled for pastures and prairies, right? So we got a little bit of that going on. It can be an injurious to grass, but if it's a prairie or a grazing system, right, you worry about it less. You can put up with a little discoloration and that sort of thing. It's got one of the beauties of that herbicide when used properly is it's got a great residual. So I'm not sure that you're going to be able to get grass to come up very effectively in there until I would pull a sample, throw some grass seed on it, stick it in a window, and see whether it germinates before. And it's not really a germination inhibitor, but as high as that rate looks in that picture, even though it was drift, I'm a little concerned about their capacity to establish anything there until next spring.
All right, thank you, Rock. Amy, you have 2 pictures on this first one. This is Grand Island.
Okay.
And he said most of the trees are okay. These are about 10 years old. They're red oaks, but a lot of them have this sort of death going on. So what do we think on these red oaks?
Oh, a trait that we're seeing all the way across the state. To me, I would lean toward environmental, in particular drought. That you see how they're browning from the tips and working their way in. That's a good indication that we're not getting enough water. So we're going to see a lot of that out of our trees. As we're going into fall, make sure we're watering our trees and watering very thoroughly. And depending on what type of winter, you may have to water them even throughout the winter. Even our deciduous, I know they're not transpiring a lot, but with how dry we are, continuing adding that water even through the winter months until the ground is frozen is going to be very beneficial for those trees in the long run.
All right, Amy, you have one picture, excuse me, on this next one. This is a horse chestnut. It's had spots before, but this year the whole tree is doing this. They want to know, is there anything they can do next year to keep this from happening?
So this one stumped me. Horse chestnut, I typically don't see any diseases in, so I'm going to chalk it up to environmental once again. It could be related to the drought situation, so adding a little bit of water. I see it's in a home lawn. Keep in mind, just because your sprinklers are hitting it is not necessarily enough water for the tree. It might be enough water for the turf, but not for the tree. So even putting the hose down and trickling water overnight on that tree is going to be beneficial for it in the long run.
All right, Amy, you have 2 pictures on this next one. This is way cool. It's an Omaha viewer. He knows he's going to cut the tree down. But this is what appeared, and then it changed into this. So what is that?
So I was scratching my head before the show, and luckily I showed Elizabeth, and she goes, "That's bubblegum fungus." I'm like, "Bubblegum fungus? You got to be kidding me!" Google it. It is really a true thing. It's called bubblegum fungus. It blows a bubble, but it's an indication that the integrity of the tree is rotted. It's not a good sign. And the viewer said that this is a tree that they are going to cut down. So it's a really cool fungus. It was the first time for me to see bubblegum fungus.
I wonder if it comes with a baseball card. So.
I don't know.
All right, Elizabeth, one picture on this first one. We've had this before, but we have a really good picture now. What's causing the broccoli to do this with this nasty-looking head? And this is from Mullen.
So with our broccoli, it's going to be a cool season crop. It's going to be one that we're going to put in early and then hopefully have it done by the time we get to the heat of the summer. And that's what we're seeing on that broccoli is it's environmental. Now we're getting into that time of year where we can be replanting our broccoli for our fall crop. And that would probably be the better idea because that one's not going to make a nice head.
All right, 2 pictures on this next one. How do you tell when it's time to pick watermelons? He has a couple photos on this.
So Gladys said that you pick a watermelon when the tendril closest to the watermelon goes brown. And then also you want to take a look at the underside. You want that spot, that ground spot, to be yellow. And then there's my favorite, to give it a good old thump. We've got some big ones out in Raising Nebraska. They're not quite ready yet. I'm thinking by the end of State Fair, we might be able to have some watermelon.
Perfect. All right, 2 pictures on the next one here. This is a viewer who has questions about calla lilies. She sent this, and she does not know what this is. She wonders what this thing is and whether she can overwinter the callas.
So yes, you can overwinter the callas. What that is the seed pod to the calla lily. Now think about the spade and spadix, and that's what the seeds are going to turn into. You can grow a calla lily from seed. Realize it's going to take you 3 years to do so, which is why we normally don't do it. But you want those seeds to go ahead and ripen, and then once they're ripe, they can go ahead and plant those. But go ahead and use the calla lilies, overwinter them, treat them like a house plant, and then you can take them back outside next year.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, we would not be where we are without you, our loyal audience, 70 years old. So we thought we would turn the show over to you and hear why exactly you love Backyard Farmer.
Backyard Farmer has been in the family for as long as it's been on the air, I think. My mom and dad, Norman and Mary Fry from Lyons, Nebraska, have been watching Backyard Farmer forever.
I watch Backyard Farmer because Dee-Dee's on it.
I've been watching Backyard Farmer, it seems like forever. And about 11 years ago, I became a master gardener, and so it helps me watching every week to see what's the current events, what are the current concerns that are going on, and then it helps me as a master gardener when I answer questions that ask the master gardener tables.
Well, I can remember as I was a kid, we watched Backyard Farmer, and Wayne Whitney was always funny. He kept it very interesting. He would have a flip thing where he wrote on the board, okay? And I remember one time they called in and asked what to spray for something. Instead of writing out the word 7, he just wrote the number 7, and they all laughed.
Oh boy, Wayne Whitney, he was a great horticulturist, and he was on the panel, and he had great wit. Sometimes his wit went a little bit too far. I was assistant county agent in Gage County, and we were out looking at horticulture. A nice lady asked us about a little tree right in front of her house, how she should take care of it. And he said, cut it off right where it comes out of the ground. She didn't take that very well, but it was the right answer. And I even got a letter about it, said, don't bring that guy around again.
I started watching Backyard Farmer because of my mom. She always had it on, and we would watch it, I believe, Thursday nights maybe.
Tell me why you like watching Backyard Farmer.
Because I like to see Grandma. We don't watch it every week, but I like the thunder part and the plants and stuff.
I am 60-some odd years, and I remember watching it at home And now we watch it, I watch it with my husband, so watched it growing up and watch it now, so yeah.
It's a warm fuzzy, it makes you feel good. It's a panel of people that really know what they're talking about from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And you find out how smart they all are and really what they know what they are talking about.
I've been watching the show since I can remember. I mean, we always had PBS when I lived out on the farm, and I always thought it was cool. The reason why I like it so much now is I feel like I'm learning so much about the plants that are in my yard, and not just weird esoteric stuff that you never see. It's like seeing some of this stuff that I see, I'm like, I know what that is. I know what we need to do for it, and that is cool.
So my wife and I were tending the garden one Friday evening, and we noticed that our rhubarb had went to seed. Saturday morning, we watched Backyard Farmer, and a viewer had sent a picture where their rhubarb had gone to seed. And the answer was there. And you cut the seed off and you discard the seed. We immediately got out of our chairs, went and tended to our garden again, and then sat down and started watching Backyard Farmer again.
I've been watching Backyard Farmer for 20 plus years. I love the show. Kim Todd is so full of great tips, and I love the fun that she has with all the different personalities on the show.
One night we was watching Dennis Farrell, and he was talking about scat. He had about 5 or 6 different pieces of scat in front of him. When he got through talking about it, he picked up one piece and started eating it. He turned around to everybody and says, don't worry about it. He says, I modeled all of this with chocolate. He says, it's perfectly safe to eat.
Yeah, I watch Backyard Farmer every week. I love it because I get to actually practice my plant pathology diagnostic skills. Come on, Lord, faster. No, Lord. I'm teasing, of course.
I find the program very informative. The public gets to ask locally their issues and get them answered directly from the professionals that know extensively what to do, what things are, and how to solve problems.
I love Backyard Farmer because they really tell you what to do with certain things. I have asked them things to do about things, and they have told me. And I especially love like Jody and all those people up there. They're just really fun to see.
I like the quiz and the way they just kind of snap fire everything in there, and everyone's trying to answer it, you know. And then once in a while you see the expert go, well, I'm going to let this one handle it over here.
I love Backyard Farmer, and I've been watching it probably for 50 years. I mean, I'm in my early 70s, but every week I watch it and really enjoy it.
Thank you so much to our loyal audience for 70 years of Backyard Farmer. All right, and you know, you can keep watching us on YouTube and Facebook over the winter because only one more show, September 15th, and then we go a little dormant for the winter. All right. Your set of questions is, the first one is just one picture. And this is, what kind of spider is this, Kate?
This one's really cool. So this is a spined orb weaver spider. So orb weavers are really common this time of year. They make those really beautiful, intricate webs that they rebuild every night. Yeah.
It doesn't even look like a spider.
No, it's very cool.
All right. So your next one, you have one picture on this one, too. This comes to us from Carter in Wayne, and found this lying in the grass. It's pretty big. So Carter touched it, it flew off. What is it?
This is a white-lined sphinx moth. Also, sometimes they're called hummingbird moths too, because they're very large and sometimes get mistaken as hummingbirds. But they visit flowers and nectar. Sometimes they add pollination services. The caterpillar will sometimes be a pest in gardens, but they also eat weeds like spurge, but the adults are beneficial.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. And one on this one as well. This is Midtown Omaha. came upon this beautiful thing in the driveway. What is that?
This is a 12-spotted skimmer dragonfly. So dragonflies are predators. Their immature stage is aquatic, but what I really love about this photo is this dragonfly is missing its abdomen. So insects can live for a while because they have a different type of nervous system than we do. So he is just functioning fine without his abdomen. Same reason why male praying mantises can still mate without heads. So pretty cool.
Too weird. I'm done. I'm done. All right. Rock, one picture on this comes to us from Springview. She's calling this a clover-like weed in her strawberry bed. What is this, and will it just be a ground cover?
I can't get rid of the praying mantis in my head. Thanks, Kate. This is oxalis, or yellow wood sorrel. And they mentioned about should we just leave it be and not control it in the strawberries or not eradicate in the strawberries? And the answer would be, if you really like the oxalis and leave it there, it's going to be oxalis for too long. Very prolific seeder. And it actually has this amazing mechanism where it literally has a trigger, and when the seed is mature, it flicks it and can flick it about 15, 20 feet. So where you have a little, you need more. So they need to get that out of there. They're going to have to hand pull it because then amongst the strawberries, there's no chemical option we can do. So yeah, they need to get that out of there, and hand pulling is the only way within the strawberries.
All right. One picture on this next one, growing in full sun, just showed up this year. What is it?
So those of you that have hay fever know what this is. It's ragweed. A single plant can produce 1 billion pollen grains, and everyone that has allergies knows what that means, right? So I'm going to say that they pull this up. If you try to control it chemically, it's got to be young because you don't want to aggravate it so that it produces more pollen, because that's what they do as a response mechanism. There are some pre-emergents that work on it. Some people have seen late fall applications of pre-work for ragweed, but it sounded like they only had 1 or 2 plants, so I just pulled those up and not just throw them willy-nilly, but put them in the garbage and get rid of that seed head as well.
All right, and 2 pictures on this next one. This comes to us from Omaha. She said this started popping up this year, and some of it is 7 feet tall.
So this is actually one of the nettles, the first one. There are 2 different weeds. The first one is a nettle, and I don't think it's stinging nettle. Nettle doesn't get that tall normally, but it's got all the characteristics of a nettle, so I can only get it down to that common name as nettle, but it's definitely not stinging because it's like 7 feet tall in that picture, right?
Yep. And they didn't ask how to control it. They just wanted to know what it was.
Yeah, it's a nettle of some kind. I can't, another picture or send it in, we could take a look at it. The second one is in the same family. It's a Chenopodium. It's in the same family as lamb's quarter. And they said it had square stems, but in reality, it has what we call angular stems. And it can be from oval to square to triangular. And often in the amaranth, in that species or that genus, they'll have red coloration or purple coloration along the rib of the plant, which is kind of cool. But once again, that's an amaranth. Those are 2 separate species. They're not the same species.
All right, thank you, Rock. 2 pictures on your first one, Amy. This comes from Lincoln. Can you identify this shroom spreading aggressively in the backyard, and can they eliminate it?
You can eliminate it all you want. It's a mushroom in the Boltus family. It's a fairly large family. It's breaking down dead organic matter, whether it's a dead root, tree root, thatch, anything like that. If you don't like it, mow it off or cut it off and dispose of it. It's not going to hurt anything.
Don't eat it. All right. So your next, you have 2 on the next one. This comes to us from Aurora, and she wonders what types of mushrooms these are. It's the first time she's seen them in the lawn.
It's a white mushroom of some type. I'm not much help here. When we get into mushroom identification, it gets really hard. You know, Rock was saying you need to look at this on the grass. Same thing with a mushroom. I got to look at gill patterns and spore patterns. It is some type of white mushroom. It is breaking down dead organic matter. I don't recommend eating it. If you are a true forager of mushrooms, you need to spend a lot of time learning mushroom identification before you even think about considering eating them. So it is a white mushroom. Mow it off. Knock it off. Once you break it off, it's not going to survive.
All right, and 2 on this next one, Amy. This is from Enders. It is what is causing the oozing on the Schubert choke cherry here.
There's a lot of oozing going on here. So to me, this is just the natural pores going on in that trunk, and it's weeping. what for some odd reason for environmental issues, I wouldn't be real concerned about. What you can see with all that sap oozing, it might turn black here in the next few weeks. Just like Kate had that picture of sooty mold, we'll get sooty mold developing on this too, because it's full of sugars. And those fungi are gonna be like, yummy food, and I'm gonna hang out here. So nothing you can do for the tree, nothing you can prevent it, just allow it to ooze. Make sure you just maintain good tree health.
All right, Amy. We have less than 2 minutes, Elizabeth, and you've got a lot of pictures. So your first two are Japanese tree lilacs, and the middle tree didn't produce much foliage. This is papillion. Is this pest or nutrient related or environment?
It's environmental because those tree lilacs are in a shade canopy of a taller tree. So they're just really thin because they're being shaded out.
All right, two pictures on the next one. This is North Platte. The pear tree looks like it's starting to die. The leaves are brown. It started on one branch, then spread to the next. The peach tree, there's a peach 15 feet away. They wonder if this will spread.
No, because that tree's dead. So they're going to need to remove that tree. We're either looking at environmental. I noticed it still had the stake on it. I don't know how long ago it was planted, but we might be looking at drought stress with it. Or we could be looking at our lovely fire blight, which will not go to the peach. It will only stay in the pears and apples.
All right,
so,
and one more picture, and this is Lincoln, a tree that was broken off at the base. You've got 20 seconds. Should this turn into a tree or?
Take it out, use your favorite triclopyr, Roundup, whatever you want, kill that because it's going to be weakly attached to that root system, not a quality tree.